so I'm out of prison and I can be back on the internet. I just want to go over everything that's happened, to give an overview, because I had a page on my website at www.amelia.scott that explained the response to it. However, a lot of the videos got took down because they were linking through to my Facebook and to my TikTok, and both of those got took down, annoyingly. And there was no reason. Well, actually, the TikToks are suspended, whereas the Facebook, I believe, is permanently banned. So I'll take you through what's on the website now. If you go to amelia.scott/court, first thing is I'm not a pedo and I did not ask for any of these images. So I've been set up by an organised campaign of both transphobic and ableist individuals who are trying to cancel me. So here is a timeline of what actually happened. And of course, yes, I reported this to the police. So I'm of course not a lawyer, so this is all simply to the best of my knowledge and understanding, but I cannot guarantee total accuracy. So I'm trying my best, obviously, but law stuff is hard. In 2022, the development team at Bloxco formed together to cancel me and push me out of the organisation. So a group of Bloxco developers conspired together in order to push me out because they did not like the fact that a trans woman with autism was running a successful Roblox group. These groups were hateful and nasty, but relatively low impact. They were like the Stop Amelia, Stop Modelly, or Exposing Modelly, whatever they were called, compared to what is to come. And these ran for a couple of years. So you can also see my statement regarding Bloxco at the time. That just goes into more detail about the kind of the fallout and what happened. If you want to read that, link's there. In 2024, this is when things started to blow up. So Charlie took control of the hate groups. He recruited more people. And then they started acting much more unlawfully in order to harm me. So the above image was taken from his public campaign website. So you can see my statement regarding Charlie and details of all of his behavior here. This is just more of a summary, so I'm just trying to keep moving through it. But yeah, he was very obsessed with me, very creepy, very inappropriate, and yeah, I blocked him and stuff and everything. But I mean, he used to work for my group ages ago, and he just became very obsessive and freaky and wouldn't leave me alone. Anyway, when Charlie took over the hate campaigns, he started recruiting people that would not act within the law. I would receive sexually threatening and abusive material both digitally and to my house, including AI images, drawings, and toilet roll stained with bodily fluid. Most of the people involved chose to send this abuse to try to push me out of online communities due to me being trans and autistic. By the way, as well, also family and friends have also received the same stuff, and they've also had to do affidavits to that effect. It got sent to them as well because they're involved with me. I don't understand why. These people are weird as hell. Anyway, as you can see from this image, I made numerous reports to the police and I met with officers on a regular basis to provide this evidence. I did everything I could to do my own research. I, gathered IP addresses, I gathered phone numbers. I tried my best to track down the people that were doing it. Sending less content to the laboratory as they were urgently asking for them to examine fingerprints and DNA. Unfortunately, none of this led to anything. So that's very unfortunate. I think they did find the phone number of the unknown caller, but not who sent the bodily fluids to my house, and a very sexually threatening letter. So these were probably the people that also created the AI images, or at least it would have been, people involved with them. It wasn't me. So when I met with officers outside our police station, I was specifically told, make sure you keep everything you are sent so that we can use it as evidence. I had shown them some of the nasty digital images and messages I was sent. However, our biggest concern was rightfully the heavily targeted and sexualized threats. So that is where the investigation was focused. And the images sent digitally were AI generated cartoons, so did not involve any real people or victims, and therefore were not highly prioritized. They were like Simpsons-esque, like cartoons, and I could see they were fake, so it didn't involve any real children or anything. Due to unlawful AI images being sent via CapCut, an app owned by TikTok, a report was made to police. So they have online monitoring, and when it sees unlawful content in someone's possession, it reports to a department in Edinburgh in Scotland. So this, as you can see, is an email from the National Child Abuse Investigation Unit in Specialist Crimes Division. So this is all in Edinburgh, okay? And this is following the raid in December where they came with the warrant and did a full search of everything. So they spoke about various charity support available. I appreciate you looking to speed up and help with the inquiry. However, please leave the investigation to ourselves. If you have anything further you're looking to report, please contact Police Scotland through relevant channels. Okay, so this is where this went. Now, I thought they would also look into reports that I had made to show that, I was going through this at the same time. However, this team here, this East Command in Edinburgh, doesn't communicate with the Alloa, the local officers in my area. They're like completely separate, almost like completely separate forces, even though they're all part of Police Scotland, but they don't share information with each other. This came apparent in some of my court sessions because they were all like, we have no clue what other teams are doing. We had no knowledge of any of this. And it's like, why aren't you talking to each other? You're one police force. Anyway, so later on, I believed I was driving to Falkirk to pick up my devices and be cleared. Instead, I was arrested, charged, and released under bail. So this was again at the end of 2024 in December. So as you can see, I got the email from the woman in this team, who was actually quite a nice person. I obviously didn't like her at the time because she was doing this to me, but she was just doing her job. However, she was nicer than some of the other officers I've met, so credit where it's due. So for Texas, I put, as you can imagine, this was a terrifying experience. I was completely overwhelmed, hence why the reply to the arrest was recorded as I don't know, because I was just in a total sensory overload. So to give this team credit where it's due, they handled the matter quickly without keeping me in custody. I was cautioned, arrested, and released under bail, all in under an hour. I was not, however, put through any interview process or shown any of the evidence against me. So I was left sort of questioning what exactly was being used. It was odd. Throughout 2025, I spent the entire year on bail and there were no checks carried out. As some of you know, I've obviously been to European Parliament, Strasbourg. I travelled through France, Germany, etc. No issues. So that was all fine. Okay, so I believe that this case would be dealt with and would never make it to trial, given that there was no criminal intent. Unfortunately, though as my case is so unusual, my first solicitors didn't believe that I had a defence, as they believed that the act itself, so the actus reus in Latin, is enough to constitute a crime, even though I believe the lack of guilty mind, so the mens rea, should be taken into account, as that is how the Scottish legal system is supposed to work, when I was doing my own research. I'm obviously not a lawyer. My legal aid solicitors did the best they could, carrying out reports and inquiries. However, I never got to meet them in person other than seeing them during the court proceedings because their office is not wheelchair accessible. So this meant that everything was carried out over quite rushed phone calls, and I could not see any of the evidence, hence why I was unaware of some of the things that were sent to me on apps such as Telegram. Oh, and the solicitors also kept changing. So every time, I would go to court as a different person each time. It was quite confusing. So Orla Broderick, I don't know who she is, but she seems to be another customer of the same lawyers that I used, and that is her review of them. So obviously that kind of made me a bit concerned. And when I was reading this, I thought to myself, maybe I should get a second opinion, right? Because that was who I was with. In 2026, a guilty plea was tendered, but it was not what I expected. So I was convinced over the phone that it was easier to simply plead guilty and to avoid a trial, as I was assured that this is a low-level offence that's unlikely to attract any media attention or impact my life. RIP. Obviously that didn't go as planned. It turned out that legal aid pays very little and means solicitors are financially incentivized to tender a guilty plea at early stage, similar to the link to a YouTube video shows the American system. It's similar, to public defenders. They're very rushed and they can't always, in complex cases, it's hard to find the defense.
At that rate, it's impossible to spend enough time on each case. One public defender in Minnesota only had about 12 minutes per client.
After a review of the discovery, I believe we can demonstrate a claim of innocence to the state of prosecutorial misconduct and insufficient evidence.
Huh?
Sorry, I got another client.
In one case, a public defender had to represent multiple people facing life sentences the same week they passed the bar exam.
So the above review is of the same law firm that I use, but from another client. I shan't name them, however, as I did not find them to be unfriendly. I thought they were trying their best. They just didn't build the best defence and only wanted to handle mitigation. I believed I was pleading to the possession element only, hence why it is reported that I was confused in court and there was a break as a result. In the moment, I was panicking and I felt bad for annoying the sheriff by not understanding what I was apparently claiming to have done. So I went into autism masking mode and went along with it. And it turns out I'd pled guilty to the creation of the images, which is not correct. That's why I was confused as well, right? So when they're reading out charges and what they're going to do, and I was like, I think that's right? Because I'm like, surely my sister will be saying the right thing, right? They were not going to be saying it wrong, are they?
The fact is, the deck is stacked against us and our clients in every single case.
But then I was like, but hang on, I didn't make them. And yeah, it was a whole mess. You see me roll and they hate, I don't know who made that meme, but it's quite funny. Anyway, my life was ruined again. And I didn't realise it could get any more ruined than an incurable blood cancer, but here we are. So immediately the media jumped onto the story. Originally it was the STV pushing independence campaign to court with Conveniently in the run-up to the May elections, as well as Kirsty from the Courier pushing an article revealing that I'm a Pride activist and Stirling University student. Well, of course, those articles are kind of clickbaity and politically motivated. They are nowhere near as bad as the backlash I faced from the transphobic press, as well as the far-right hate groups. This also led to me being immediately excluded from all my social groups, even Sterling Pride, who permanently excluded me without having even contacted me to verify if any of that information was even correct. This upset me, as I was obviously a founding committee member of Sterling Pride, and makes me realise that better processes should have absolutely been put in place. With financial support, I was able to approach another law firm for a second opinion. They claim that I may have a potential defence under the reasonable and necessary purposes section of the 1982 Act. Of course, this legislation was created decades before AI and even the internet, and this defence hasn't been tried yet, so it's understandable my original legal aid team didn't consider it, because it's a new defence, but it does make sense, because there is that position in the Act that states that for reasonable purposes you can have a defence in that motive. Following that plea, I was visited for the first time by SOPU, which is the Sex Offender Policing Unit, and this led to an unlawful device seizure. So, on the Thursday, I was visited by a male officer and a female officer. This was the first time this has happened and was an unannounced visit and first thing in the morning. And I felt the female officer was fair and reasonable, but the male officer came across as being very prejudiced and was asking very strange questions, as if he was desperate just to find fault in anything. Throughout this page, I've censored police officers' identities, as I do not wish to put any at risk, even if this one acted so incompetently it led to me being on remand. So from now on, I refer to him as Baldy. There are many bold police officers, even within SOPU, so I'm absolutely avoiding identifying or putting him at risk, because, while I don't like him, what he did to me was incredibly traumatic. He put me through hell, and he violated my human rights, or at least caused the system as a whole to violate my human rights, through his actions that then, pushed it down the line. I wouldn't want harm to come to him. I think he should probably face consequences in terms of his conduct, but not, from the public. Anyway, Baldy decided that because I had been sent nudes on a dating app, that I could potentially be offending, even though the images were of a grown adult sent from a lesbian dating app that requires age verification. Like, literally, just ask any of my exes.
This can now be placed in your bag.
It makes no sense. It was literally an adult on a dating app that I matched with that sent me them. Anyway, unfortunately, Baldy is not aware of what a woman's body looks like, so he decided to seize all the devices on my property, putting me in a very vulnerable position. No further charges were made in relation to these devices, however, they've still not been returned. So he didn't charge me on that Thursday. He just took all my devices. Okay. So, the return of Baldy. After police officers left, I went back to bed, as my cancer obviously caused me to have very limited energy. It's known to be a chronic illness. When I woke up later, I remembered that I had an old Android Doro phone that might be in a bag at the end of my bed. I found it and I put my SIM card into it. The SOPU team told me that if I bought a new phone, and this is actually Baldy specifically said this, I had to call them to declare it. But I simply found the Doro phone that they were already aware of from seeing the box earlier. So I thought I would simply check with them at the station the following day, because I had to go to complete the notification requirements anyway. I posted a TikTok comment reply explaining what happened that evening. I described it as a police raid because that is how uncomfortable Baldy made me feel, especially with line of questioning and such.
I got raided again because they came back because they're so lovely like that. And they say, because you're on bail, we actually have a condition where we can do regular searches of your devices, and you have to let them even without warrant. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, it's not, but do it. At this point, I'm used to being oppressed. So they said, well, we need to take all your devices to do searches on with cybercrime experts. I was like, okay, fine. It's not fine at all. It's horrendous. It's really left me feeling vulnerable and scared. But they just take everything anyway because they don't give a shit about, the people they're meant to protect. They're just doing their jobs, aren't they? And I won't expose the actual individuals, they're just doing their jobs in a broken system, but it's the system's fault that it's allowing people to be treated like this. I think it's disgusting. So yeah, with no rights whatsoever, just take everything. And it's not like a robbery where you can report it to the police, you can claim things back on insurance, because things are being stolen by the police, by the law enforcement. It is this weird sort of lawless dictatorship where police can just take whatever they want, whenever they want.
The next day when Baldy came on shift, he was made aware of the TikTok and was clearly annoyed that I had posted about his actions, so he came back to my house first thing in the morning with a different female officer who, to her credit, was really lovely, actually. She was. Baldy believed that due to me not giving them the Doro phone, I'd breached my bail, so he arrested me. This was on Friday morning. I was held in Falkirk custody until Monday evening, over 100 hours, right? When GOAME finally took me to court because they fucked up all, like, the transport. So, the injustice system. If being held in a custody cell for over 100 hours wasn't insane enough, the sheriff chose to remand me on Monday evening. Apparently, he remanded every single person that day, and they wonder why Scottish Prison Service is so overcrowded. Initially, I was to be sent to a women's prison in Stirling. However, the transphobic powers that be had scribbled over the court document and wrote that I should instead be taken to H&P Low Moss, a male prison. Right? This is ridiculous. So the GOAME people that were taking me to court had documents that showed I was going to Stirling. They knew I was going to go to Stirling, a women's prison. They were preparing me, telling me about Stirling, saying I'd be going there. And then when they came out of court, someone literally, like, scribbled it out and wrote, take to H&P Low Moss. And they did. I mean, that is insane. That definitely is reviewing by Equality Human Rights Commission. Anyway, so I was kept there for 6 weeks with no access to any of my private medications that I'm fully dependent on, and very unreliable access to my NHS prescriptions. This led to me becoming incredibly unwell, including my cancer increasing in size in my neck. In fact, you know what, I'll demonstrate this now because I can, it's easy. I mean, obviously there's also cancer lumps in my chest, stomach, and armpits, but the neck one you can see. So, see here, let me see if I can show them. There's like two. Can you see the little break? There's this one here. That was what it was like when I went into prison. This one between my two fingers, yeah. And then you see this where it's grown up. It's gone up here. That one, that's new. Here, see, it's not on this side at all. So that one's completely flat. Here you can see new cancer lumps. That's because I was neglected and not given access to proper healthcare. Right, so this led to me becoming incredibly well, including my cancer increasing in size of my neck. The SPS officers were very friendly people, you know, to their credit, they were lovely, doing their jobs, decent folk, can't complain about them. But prison is a horrible place to be from a healthcare perspective. As while the frontline staff are pleasant, it is very poorly ran and over capacity. I also missed several family visits and calls due to staffing or management issues within the prison, and I often couldn't make phone calls as I kept running out of credit. I missed several court dates due to GOAME and the SPS failing to arrange wheelchair transport. This led to me being held for over 6 weeks unnecessarily. I was on remand for 6 weeks without, you know, access to a fair trial. Anyway, I held out in prison until I could face trial despite the torture I faced, you know, given my health and the fact I didn't have access to proper healthcare. And I still remember my prison number off by heart, and I had it written on my arm. I had to. Every time you went for meds, they'd be like, you know, what's your number? And you'd have to remember it. So I always had to write on my arm, and I just remembered like how ironic that was, thinking back to history and how, you know, historically we know minorities have been persecuted in similar ways to people assuming now because I'm trans that I just must be some dangerous person.
Just because you have rights today does not mean that you will have rights tomorrow.
Yeah, history repeats itself. Anyway, every time there was a court hearing, my solicitor motioned for bail due to my declining health, and every time was met with the same robotic response. It is the responsibility of the Scottish Prison Service to provide healthcare to those on remand. By the sheriff, who completely ignored the suffering I was going through. The European Convention of Human Rights states an absolute prohibition of torturing prisoners in response to the atrocities of Nazi rule and World War II. No one shall be subject to torture or to inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment in all circumstances. Human dignity must be respected, even in detention. Acts of torture or ill treatment must be considered as criminal offences. And that's from the Council of Europe. I've hyperlinked it. You can click through if you want to verify that. Yes, there's Brexit, but the UK is still bound by the ECHR. Right. Now, I'm talking about our rights as European citizens, and as I'm a fierce advocate for the European Union, below I will comment on some of the other human rights violations that I believe have been committed by Scottish authorities in my case. And this, yeah, it's something I've seen a lot about. As you can see, June 2025, I won the award at the European Parliament in Strasbourg for the best European Citizens Initiative proposal to improve gender affirming care. So obviously I understand sort of our rights as Europeans quite well. Actually, as well, only like a week before I was arrested, I was actually meeting with the Vice President of the European Commission, who's an absolute icon. Love her, in the Westminster University. So yeah, I do a lot of work with the European Union and to promote Scotland's rightful place in it. So I'm genuinely terrified as to where the UK is headed post-Brexit with regards to the blatant disregard for our human rights and the ECHR, which is basically like the European version of the Constitution. You know, Americans like defend our constitutional.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I. I believe that until proven guilty, every man, woman, and child in this country is innocent.
It's like that, yeah? You kind of have to protect the Constitution of the ECHR because that is what protects us from war. Right. I believe that forcing me onto cellular confinement, placing me as a woman in a male prison, and denying me access to healthcare is all in direct violation of the European Convention on Human Rights and should be challenged in the European courts. I believe in an independent Scotland rejoining the EU, but clearly we have a long way to go. Had I pled guilty, I could have potentially been released sooner. I find that disgraceful that I was basically punished for seeking a fair trial, right? I kept being told, if you say you're guilty, you might be able to get your bail reviewed sooner. But I know I'm not guilty because I know that I didn't hide anything and I know I followed the rules. Anyway, I also believe that the monitoring of device activity that started this whole thing, you know, with TikTok, and the Online Safety Act violates the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 8. Everyone has the right for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. This right embodies the right to a name, the right to change one's civil status and to acquire a new identity, and protection against telephone tapping, collection of private information by a state security service, and publications infringing privacy. This right also enables members of a national minority to have a traditional lifestyle. We should not be facing this state-sanctioned oppression. Anyway, that's also from the Council of Europe if you want to click it through. The Scottish Prison Service also violated Article 6 by not allowing me the right to a fair trial within the time frame. This might have also been GOAMI or SPS. I know sometimes they blame SPS, sometimes it's GOAMI. It's one of them. Anyway, it's Scottish Government or someone under it. Everyone is entitled to a fair public hearing within a reasonable time by an independent, impartial tribunal. All persons charged with an offence shall be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Yet I was constantly failed to go to court because they did not book the proper wheelchair transport. So I couldn't go to court and I was held in prison for much longer than I should have been. Anyway, I am also entitled to compensation from the Scottish Government as they have breached Article 5, the right to liberty and security. Everyone has the right to liberty. Everyone arrested shall be informed of the reasons for the arrest and shall be entitled to a trial within a fair and reasonable length of time or to be released pending trial. This right protects people against arbitrary arrest and detention, you know, like what Boldy did to me. Anyone whose arrest or detention is contrary to the rights guaranteed by Article 5 is entitled to compensation. So I better get that moolah. Anyway, in certain cases linked with protection of law and order, however, deprivation of liberty may be authorised but must uphold the rights secured in the convention. Again, you can click through to Council of Europe if you want to check my references there. Boldy arresting me for publishing a TikTok that he didn't like is also, obviously violates that one above, and also is in direct contravention to Article 10, my freedom of expression. So it's similar to freedom of speech in America. We have freedom of expression in Europe. Now, everyone has the right to freedom of expression and to receive and impart information. This right also covers the freedom of press. So important. Freedom of expression is one of the essential foundations of a democratic society. The media require particular protection because they play a key role in defending freedom of expression. Article 10 protects, amongst others, the right to criticise, to make assumptions, or value judgments, and the right to have opinions. So I can say Boldy's a twat on here because that's my opinion. Okay. Anyway, you know, maybe he's a nice person outside of it, but he's not very good at his job. Anyway, Their regular and sometimes unlawful seizures of my property without fair compensation actually also violates ECHR Article 1 of Protocol Number 1. Everyone has the right to own property and to use its possessions. No one shall be deprived of his property unless public necessity so demands, and if so, the state must guarantee fair compensation, which they have not done. They have consistently stolen things from me, seized them both with and without warrants, and have not compensated or returned any of them. So here we go, another violation. So whether I will ever receive justice for this remains to be seen, but I feel it is incredibly important that I raise these issues, as it genuinely terrifies me that we are potentially seeing a very far right, very Nazi-esque approach to politics. So whether you believe I'm innocent or not is actually irrelevant to this, right, in terms of human rights, because they apply to everyone. Hence why I never complain about or try to interfere with the journalists at court, even though obviously what they do pisses me off, because they might not be that bad, but then they post stuff about me, which gets, you know, Chinese whispered for all the different groups, and then I'm getting people sending me death threats. Anyway, I support their right to freedom of expression, even though it can sometimes very much not be in my favour. My experience of the Scottish legal system feels very much like a mob rule or a witch trial, and it certainly doesn't feel fully democratic. So, what happened on release? After I was eventually able to start my trial at Alloa Sheriff Court, the two female officers were very competent on the stand, and they backed my side of events. You know, no issues with female officers, they were great. Proving that I was always honest about the fact that I didn't know where that Doro phone was, and they left my house knowing that it was still there. I just couldn't remember where in that exact moment due to being autistic, obviously tied with my cancer, and just unexpectedly visited out of the blue. Unfortunately, it was a split trial, and I was sent back to prison to wait for Baldy to attend court so that his side of events could be put into evidence. He was very incompetent on the stand and perverted the course of justice by ignoring the sheriff's instructions to not speak on the interaction from prior to him cautioning me. He felt it was appropriate to bombard me with questions first thing in the Friday morning, suspecting me of a crime without reading me my rights. Oh my God, the incompetence of Baldy never fails to amaze me. Anyway, shockingly, when cross-examined by my solicitor, Baldy claimed that it was not necessary to caution somebody who he suspected of a criminal offence. My solicitor rightly pointed out that this is completely incorrect. I believe Baldy poses a risk to society as he holds authority under the Police Service of Scotland, but does not abide by Scottish law. Under Section 31 of the Criminal Justice Scotland Act 2016, police must inform a suspect of their rights. The caution before any interview begins. It specifically states you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence, and you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given as evidence. See why that's important? Even more important than the Act itself is a long-standing rule in Scots law. Statements made but to police are only admissible if they were obtained fairly. If evidence is obtained by unfair questioning, like him showing up first thing in the morning and bombarding me with questions without a caution, it can be excluded. Unfair includes questioning a suspect without informing them of their rights. Scottish courts should treat this as a fundamental safeguard, and this is also a direct violation of the European Convention of Human Rights, Article 6, yet again. Due to Baldy's utter discontempt for the Scottish legal system and our rights as European citizens, evidence prior to caution, where I was overwhelmed, felt threatened, couldn't get my words out, etc., was used to find me guilty of the breach of bail offence. I feel like I've been completely failed as an autistic woman, as my autism symptoms were not properly taken into account. This was a judgment made by a single sheriff who postponed sentencing until the next main case was handled in Falkirk. He believed that I intentionally concealed a Doro phone. That's obviously untrue. And there would be no reason for me to have done so, as there was nothing unlawful found on that device. My plan now is to withdraw the guilty plea to the original matter, so that'll be at the next, sentence in Falkirk. And then hopefully we'll be able to appeal the breach of bail conviction following sentencing. Okay, I also attached a random picture of me with Nicola Sturgeon because, the media loves it, putting us together. And Nicola Sturgeon is iconic. I love her. Obviously, I don't know her that well, and I can't say what's going on with her husband or whatever. But I do feel for her because she seems to be in a similar situation to me at the moment. We're both sort of under attack by the media. Anyway, some additional information I just feel is important to clarify. So this case is due to an automated detection system in TikTok that reported unlawful pseudo AI generated cartoons, some of which I didn't realize were sent to Telegram and CapCut on an iPhone I rarely used during the period I was undergoing chemotherapy. And the ones I was aware of, I had reported to the police already, as you could see from the above, stuff, the emails. There are no children or victims involved with this case. I'm being called like some kind of child sex offender. It makes no sense. I have no interest in children. I don't know where that has come from. I've absolutely not abused anyone. There are no victims, and this case has nothing to do with real children. The fake stories that are shared online, as I previously said, are of ex-Bloxco employees who are conspiring to try to keep their games more popular than mine, because the more they can attack me, the more they get me blacklisted, the more they can get my games pushed down, and the more they can make more money. It's very financially motivated. Anyway, I'm a fierce advocate for the rights of children, and I back the NSPCC wholeheartedly. I stand firmly against sexual offenders, and I myself am the victim of sexual assaults, which is also why I find it pisses me off so much, because, I report so much, and I've been a victim of so much, and yet fuck all happens. And then they have all the time and money and resources to harass me for keeping evidence that the police told me that I had to keep. What the fuck? Anyway, this is a relatively small case that would usually not attract any media attention and would simply just be subject to a social work order to assess the background of the generated images. Unfortunately, the media has jumped onto this to use the headline "Independence Campaign Accord," using my situation as political football to smear a wider movement. The media has tried to make out that I took or created indecent images, which they got from the plea, but this is untrue. The only part I agreed was correct is the element of take-make, as in the device took a download and made a copy of the images sent to it. That can also sometimes be called creation, confusingly, even though you didn't originally create the images, because the law's weird. Anyway, this is automatic in many cases, like Telegram, WhatsApp, etc., and happens without any criminal intent. Mens rea. Unfortunately, due to the complex legal language, this has been severely misinterpreted by both journalists and the public as a whole. Now, I think this is important because I might sound angry or crazy or weird or whatever. I always get told that I'm weird, and weird isn't illegal, so that means nothing. I am diagnosed with autism, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, severe depression, anxiety, and a rare form of blood cancer, NLPHL. I'm also emotionally immature in a sense that at the age of 17, I was diagnosed with a mental age of 12. So I am, socially disabled, and I may not always say things 100% correct, but I am genuinely trying my best to get my points across, and please be patient and try to understand. I do get people telling me hey, the way you phrase this isn't helpful. People may not like you if you say it like this or whatever, but I am just being my genuine self, and I'm showing you my genuine emotions, and I'm showing you this is what I'm going through. This is what happened. Okay. And I think it's really important that people know the truth, because the headlines aren't giving them to you. And that's why I felt yeah, I'm also keeping these on here. So the comments from some of the online community that I believe may add some helpful clarifications and just some additional information that clear up some misconceptions. So regardless of in the eyes of the law, it's in your possession. And that's why I said 100%. And that's why I thought it was technically guilty for being on the device, which I believe is unfair, but that's the law. Intent is irrelevant for this legislation, sadly, because it was implemented in 1982 when we didn't all have instant access to information. Because it makes sense in 1982, right? If someone had the images, they had to take it. It would have been something that they either physically went out and bought, or they had, they purposely got it. You can't accidentally have that in 1982. Whereas nowadays, people are pinging stuff all around. I mean, even back when I was in secondary school, because I'm only 23, it wasn't that long ago. People were sending stuff like that all the time. People would always be taking pictures, sending them around. That was just part of our growing up. That was part of our culture. So, this legislation isn't really considering this. And then Ala on the Saw put on Reddit that Hugh Edwards had 41 real images with actual child victims. Disgusting. Including multiple category A. He clearly solicited at points, while also manipulated a young man with no direct consequences and got no jail time. And they're talking prison for a seemingly... Yeah, you're right. So hang on, this person is actually a pedo, actually a child sex offender, and he didn't go to prison. Yeah, I have no interest in that. I was literally just sent this, and I was actively reporting it. And I did. Yeah, that's stupid. Anyway, Yeah, it wouldn't add up as a custodial it wouldn't add up as a custodial sentence unless there's much more to it. It seems odd. Who sent the images? How and why were they received? Why is an autistic wheelchair using young person cutting about a court in such a serious scenario with no support, with an often predatory media lying in wait? Yes, that's Kirsty. I'll tag her below. She's always there. Giving me a photo shoot outside court. Anyway, there are so many failures of duty of care here for a disabled young person, whether they are an offender or not. The reported responses of the woman make it very obvious how at risk they could be. Where is their social or support worker? The court and police have responsibilities that have clearly and sadly, unsurprisingly, been abdicated. And yes, Alonasaur, I completely agree with you. And I do have social workers now, and I've also been given some brochures. I need to reach out to some people. There's some like support services I might look into that like advocacy that help with like neurodiversity, stuff like that, and getting that across. However, what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought. Oh yes, Police Scotland aren't revealing the data. So my sister's put in a DSAR, so data subject access request, Police Scotland saying, you know, give us all the stuff Amelia reported, you know, prove it, prove what I reported, you know, show that I was told, keep the evidence, you know, because that will prove that I was just following their instructions. Police Scotland refused. They said they will not provide it because it pertains to an ongoing investigation. So I believe the sheriff has basically put in place some kind of demand that says, Police Scotland, you must provide this information, or if you're not going to, you have to fight it in court as them being the defendant, because they're concealing information because they know it'll make them look stupid, basically. That's what I believe. Anyway, I don't know if that's true, but that's my little conspiracy theory, because otherwise, why wouldn't they just give it up, right? I have every right to it. It's my data. Data Protection Act 2018, followed by the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, gives me the right to that data. The only reason they would hide it is if they got something to hide, and I find that very suspicious. Anyway, I don't think such a distinction exists in law just now, that really should. The same thing happened with Hugh Edwards. He admitted the guilt for making indecent images, that the actual, still super serious and fuck the nonce bastard crime was receiving 41 images over WhatsApp. Right, yeah, that is grim, and obviously he seeked that out, and yeah, no, that's disgusting. Okay. And this guy didn't even go to jail, and I find that ridiculous. Anyway, so from my understanding, you didn't create the content, you were sent it on Telegram and it auto-saved your device, yep, and someone reported it to the police, perhaps the people who sent it, but it's strange. Yeah, so actually, by the way, to clarify, again, that was the automated system that did that, because the original court document said they received an automated report from TikTok, because it scans for that. Strange, how would they know it's actually saved in your device? Could it be someone you told, as you mentioned, you told your friends? It feels like a politics war. People who don't agree with your political views will twist stuff. 100%. This has all been made political, and I don't know why. Well, I do know, because people are cunts, but, you know, it didn't need to be. Right, it was also suspicious of the comments saying the police didn't ask them any questions or interview them. That just doesn't happen. Right, so in Scotland it can and does. There's no legal requirement to interview a suspect prior to charging in Scotland. 100% correct. And as I said, you know, back with that email where I was meeting the officers in Falkirk from the Edinburgh team that had basically driven over, they just went through, arrested, charged. It was just a whip through. There was no interview. Anyway, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I genuinely believe that MI5 has set you up to smear the independence movement. I hope you're doing well and protecting your peace. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm a mess. I feel like I'm being gaslit into believing I'm a criminal when I haven't hurt anyone or knowingly broken any law. It reminds me of that, like, you know, that Sex Offender Shuffle song where the guy's like, you know, this is all to support, please help, and the guy's just like holds a gun to him, like, shut the fuck up and just say you did it.
Okay, real quick, I'm not like these people. Okay, this is an extortion plot by my ex-wife, who's the only witness, and she's trying to take away my kids. And if I'm not here to pack my duffel, I'm just here to do the Sex Offender Shuffle.
State of Florida has asked us to disclose our sexual crimes to you. We were bad, but now we're good. We're moving into your neighborhood. We're obliged to admit the crimes for which we were convicted. We're not here to start no trouble. We're legally required to do the sex offender shuffle.
No one cares about the truth. As soon as you've been, you know, put in the public eye as some kind of horrible person, no one listens to what actually happened. Anyway, Fishbrick says, hiya, if this is true, this is incredibly unfortunate and unfair. I thought the four images seemed weird. Exactly, right? I was saying this as well, is that when you see real, you know, crimes, if someone has a genuine sexual interest in children, they'd have, like, you know, thousands of images. They'd have, you know, proper, like, servers full of it, you know, devices full of it. Like, it would be a lot, right? It wouldn't just be, like, you know, a few like weird AI stuff that people got sent as like, you know, part of a harassment. Like, that's not how it works. That wouldn't be a sexual thing. Anyway, I'm sure the truth will come out. I hope you're doing okay, and please take care of yourself. Oh, I really hope so. And thank you, Fishbrick. Yeah, I'm being made to feel like a criminal. I don't understand why it's necessary. Exactly. M said, if that's the case, then why did you plead guilty and not take it to try and argue this? You didn't have to plead guilty. You decided to plead guilty. Well, decided is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I felt very much pressured to plead guilty based on the legal aid advice, which, as you know, isn't always the best. I don't know. It's apparently not based on intent, but mere possessions. My sister said it's better for me to put guilty now, even though I don't believe myself to be guilty, other than technically in the sense of them actually being there, i.e. actus reus, act itself, but not the mens rea, the guilty mind. That was my belief. So they've done all this shit to you without an interview or support worker. At least it'll give you some grounds to appeal, since it's also likely not in the public interest charges and circumstances. 100%. I don't understand why this is in the public interest. When I've faced sexual assault myself, I know for a fact less than 1% of sexual assault and rape ever leads to conviction. Yet they have all this time to twat about with public money and resources on literal AI generated images attacking me for them being sent to me, and not going after the people that are harassing me in the first place and sending them. I'm sorry, the logic is not logicking. Anyway, absolutely. And I don't get why I wasn't interviewed or given an appropriate adult, any of the things I thought they were meant to do. And everything says, all very strange and very worrying that people can be set up like this. The reporting on this is all very transphobic. I agree 100%. I still don't understand why they need to mention what you were assigned at birth. Agree 100%. It's a culture war, isn't it? I don't agree with your views on every little thing, but I've always found you very interesting. Listen to, look after yourselves, a lot to deal with. Thank you, Edinburgh Prank. And I love that comment as well. I don't agree with views, because I'm actually like that with a lot of people, right? I don't agree with, there are some people in my family that I love so much, and I find them really fascinating, and I love meeting with and chatting to, and, you know, we can be quite different politically, and we can often have political, you know, debates, and I actually enjoy it. I like having a, you know, honest conversation. They're not bad people, they're decent people, but they might be like more capitalist, or they might be not agreeing with me on certain policies or something, and, you know, they're nice people, but you can have debates with them, and that's what I like. I think that's what's nice about democracy, proper democracy, where you can have these honest discussions. So thank you for taking time to read through my side of the story, and that already makes you better than the majority of people on the internet. I'd appreciate your support in sharing my message. If you have any information that you believe might be relevant to my case, do feel free to reach out to my team. They're available 24/7 on the phone number, and you can also email help@motley.com. Oh yeah, if you'd also like to join my Roblox group, that would be great. You can click the link through my website. I actually can't get onto Discord now because I can't get into my accounts because they took the devices. You need a device to verify, and I'm still trying to figure that out. It's a whole fucking mess. Anyway, hopefully I'll be in there. But either way, if I need something shared in my Discord, I'll just ask one of my employees to do it. My team are amazing, by the way. I did say this, like, I'm so lucky to have such wonderful people working for me that are supporting me, because actually it is just having people that back me is such a help. Like, for example, one of my employees said, we will always back you. I'm so glad you're back now. Everything that's happened, everything you've been through and gone through is horrible. Take your time. I know things haven't been easy at all for you, but we've all got the ropes until you're ready. Fab and Yeston have done such a good job at running things while you've been away. We will get Modley back to where it should be with activity and fighting all this shit. Glad you're home where you belong. I love this. And that was Spencer. And then obviously Yeston also said, no worries, take your time to rest. Me and Fab have got all of this for you. Don't worry about anything. We just need you for PBX. That's all, but chill out and relax. When you're feeling back to yourself, we're here for you. I've got loads of amazing employees that are there for me, and that's really wonderful. And if you want to join my Roblox group, please do go via modley.com, and yeah, you can join, because we do need to try to get activity up. We do need to try to revive it a bit, because it is dying. And, you know, these cancel groups, they're winning. They are, you know, trying to take away from my success. I've obviously got the purple Sparkle Time of O's award from Roblox, which I won for creating games with over 100,000 monthly active users. So I am a good developer. I can make good games, but because of oppression, I'm constantly held down, and my games are constantly took down. So we need to overpower it, you know. We need to please try to build me up. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, if you have any comments, please keep it respectful. I will, if you're just going to be nasty or comment anything nasty, I will just block you immediately. I will not have any tolerance for it, because I don't have the mental capacity to deal with this with everything going on. And also, please ask questions about other things that I'm interested in. or get me talking about something else, because this is such a sad thing to be dealing with. This is so exhausting, and it's living rent free in my brain 24/7, and I'd rather not be thinking about this all the time. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone that supported me, and thank you to all my lovely followers. I love you so much. Okay, thank you. Bye.